we're going to continue on with a review of what I'm calling toolbox number 1. In this toolbox, we're going to review the concepts that we went over since about last November. So we started on the last video with valence and charge, and then I showed you how to combine two elements, two ions, to make an ionic compound, and how we develop the name of that compound. So this video is going to cover what I'm calling pages 3 and 4. So this is going to be how to put transition metal names together when they're involved in a compound. Those are the ones with the Roman numerals, if you remember that. The other one we're going to cover is a quick review of covalent bonding, including Lewis structures and the names for covalent compounds. So if you're taking notes on a brand new toolbox, remember that that is going to be on pages 3 and 4. So let me switch over, and so we can begin. All right, we're just about there. Okay. So this particular compound that we're going to start with is going to be with phosphorus and bromine. And there's going to be 3 of those bromines. So this is perhaps a covalent compound, perhaps an ionic compound. When we look at it, we may not know for sure. We know in this case it is 2 nonmetals, so we suspect that it is a covalent compound, but we're going to use electronegativity to be sure of what type of compound it is. So I'm going to go over to my periodic table and take a look at the electronegativities. So as you can see, the electronegativities for phosphorus is 2.2 and for bromine is 2.8. So I'm going to go back over, write those down. 2.2 minus 2.8. And remember, I want the absolute value of that, which is going to be 0.6. Our cutoff, if you remember, is things that went from 0 to 0.5 were non-polar covalent. And since this one is less than 1.67, it is in this area, and so this is a polar covalent molecule. So polar covalent. The next thing that we need to do is develop its name. And because this is a covalent compound, we have to mention or include the number of atoms for each element in the name. So we're going to start with just the element name. So in this case, it is phosphorus and bromide. Remember that we always want the IDE at the end of it. Our prefixes, remember this is covalent, so we have to have prefixes where 1 was mono, 2 was di, 3 was tri, 4 was tetra, 5 was penta, and we never start a name with mono. So up front here, there is only 1 phosphorus, and so we don't need a prefix there. In this case, there are 3 of the bromides, so we're going to put the prefix tri in front of that. So its name is phosphorus tribromide. The next thing that we're going to do is to draw the Lewis structure. Since this is PBr3, we're going to start with the phosphorus in the middle, drawing it nice and big. Then we need to go back, take a look at the periodic table again. I'm going to use my electronegativity periodic table to count valence electrons. And so in this case, starting at the left, we're going to count columns. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So phosphorus has 5 valence electrons, and bromine, if we count a little further over, each of those will have 7. So the phosphorus, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we'll write in the bromines. I'll get a different color to do those. We'll use some green today. So bromine, bromine, and bromine. And each of those had 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we'll circle that bond. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And again, circle the bond. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and circle the bond. So there's our completed Lewis structure. The last thing that we need to do is to count how many pairs of electrons there are on the central atom. And so in this case, there is 1, 2, 3, 4 total. And only this one up here is a lone pair. So remember, that's 4 total and 1 lone pair. So what happens if it is not covalent, but it has a transition metal in it? So for those with transition metals, we need to include the charge. So I'm going to switch colors back over here. I'll pick blue this time. And we'll pick one this time, perhaps iron and chlorine. Then we'll make sure that there are 3 chlorines. So what we need to be able to do when we name this is we're going to start out, just as we always do, with the element name first, which is iron. And then second will be the other element name with the IDE on the end of it, so chloride. All right. When we look at our periodic table, we know that iron is right in the center of the periodic table. It is a transition element, and so we need to make sure that we include the charge. But how do we figure out the charge? Well, the easiest way to do that is when we used to do the 5-step crossover, you would start with the charges of the iron and the chlorine and then cross them over. In this case, all that we're going to do is reverse that process. So rather than go from top to bottom, we're going to go the other way. In this case, the +3 goes there, and we know that there's a little 1 right here, and we just don't write the 1s, but when it comes up here to the chlorine, we know that the anions are always negative. So in this case, we know now that the charge on the iron is 3. So when we write that formula, we're going to include the 3 as a Roman numeral because that's the charge on the iron. So its formal name is iron 3 chloride. So I've included some extra worksheet practice for you if you need to review those a little bit further.